Vladimir Putin told German Chancellor Angela Merkel that Ukraine should buy off militants in Ukraine with money and autonomy to resolve the conflict in the country's east. The Russian president made the proposal during a then-secret one-to-one conversation with Merkel on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Australia, UK newspaper The Financial Times reported on Tuesday. Citing its own sources, the FT writes that Merkel arranged the meeting as a final attempt to understand exactly what the Kremlin wanted to achieve intervening in Ukraine. Merkel rejected Putin's solution of bribing fighters, a method he'd used to deal with Chechen fighters in Russia. The authors write, "A reasonable idea perhaps to an ex-KGB colonel, but for an East German pastor's daughter with a deeply ingrained sense of fairness, this was unacceptable." The very next day, Merkel adopted a harsher tone in her comments, saying that Russia could threaten not only Ukraine, but also Georgia or the Balkans. One German official said negotiations in Brisbane marked a turning point in relations between the two leaders. Suddenly, Europe woke up to months of failed diplomacy that left both sides on the brink of a new Cold War, he says. Putin departed Australia early, skipping the second day of the summit. But relations actually began to deteriorate long before the G20. One EU diplomat was quoted as saying, "Ms. Merkel used to see Mr. Putin as a difficult partner, but one she could do business with. But the Ukraine crisis has changed her mind. She realized Mr. Putin was not telling the truth in their conversations, for example, in his denials that Russian troops were directly involved in the takeover of Crimea and later in eastern Ukraine." The German Chancellor has taken centre stage in the EU in calls for the bloc's 28 nations to unite in supporting sanctions against Moscow, especially after the downing of flight MH17 above the militant-held area of Ukraine on July the 17th.